So, and I still haven't been updated on how long that's gonna take. I mean, I imagine that it might take a little while still. So I'm not, and I told Classic this like, listen, mate, we don't really do anything at the moment. We might in the future, sure, but at the moment, we've got our own server, which is nice, we can use. But don't expect any missions or daily flights or blah. Because, well, for one, I don't even play DCS daily. Don't think I could. As much as I like the game, I think that'd get really fucking tiring really fucking quickly.
I have that when I play the game for just 1 second. I mean.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, the moment you install it, you're like, oh, this is complicated.
I mean, it's already installed.
Yeah.
Shake the cops. Are you fucking...
Shake the cops, but there are no cops.
No, there's one running towards you right now.
Oh, there he is.
And I just drive for like 2 meters and it's gone. Okay.
GG. But anyways, on to more fun things. I have been tinkering with the story a little bit more. Now,
Oh boy.
I have written a small bit of it just to give Josie something to fawn over. But I haven't gotten into the whole nitty-gritty writing stuff because one of the perspectives, the one of the princess, I already wrote those scenes in another story, so I need to kind of because I liked the way that story was going, but the world in which that story takes place, it doesn't really align with the current one anymore. So I'm going back and I'm editing those scenes.
Fair.
Now that's not exactly, I'd say, fun work, because I need to also reread those things, rewrite them a little bit here and there, just to kind of get myself back into that story, and obviously make it fit into this new envelope that we've got. And that's not exactly, I'd say, a fun task. It's kind of mind-numbing at some point. But once I get through that, then yeah, the fun stuff can kind of begin. Now I've also made a few small changes, because that's just what I do. That's
Yep.
but this is relatively innocent compared to complete rewrites of the story, because I've done enough of that. Now for one I added is, obviously this is, again, not that I'm got any sort of delusions that I'll ever get that far, but this is written with the baseline of being a trilogy, and because I'm I'd like to call myself a at least somewhat competent writer. I know that if you make a trilogy, you have to obviously take that into consideration. You can't just fucking wing those things. You can't give it the fucking Disney Star Wars trilogy fucking treatment by just writing one story, then having someone else write the second, and then having someone else write the third with no communication. Whoever thought that was a good idea is a fucking moron, because pretty sure you've heard that those movies weren't particularly well received by anyone.
I mean,
the first one, alright, that was relatively okay. The second and third, however, holy fuck, that was just a shit show.
yeah, but that's what I have with everything from Disney, so...
Yeah, fair. I mean, they have made some pretty good series, admittedly. They have also made some very shit ones, so it's been really hit or miss with Star Wars and just Disney in general. But there was one, I mean, 2 projects at least that are, funnily enough, related to each other, that were miles fucking better than everything else. But those aren't movies, they're series, which, I mean, I don't mind. If it's good, it's good. I don't mind. But I never really get excited about, ooh, let's watch a series.
Which 2 series were they?
One was actually a movie, the first one, which was Star Wars Rogue One, which is kind of like a spin-off-ish. Is it in the like the original trilogy? You've got this thing called the Death Star, right? Pretty big thing, pretty big deal. I'm pretty sure every human alive knows what the fuck a Death Star is.
No, I don't.
Maybe not if you live in Ethiopia or you're called Riddle. Big fucking ball in space, like a massive battle station.
Well, yeah, I've seen it, but I haven't really, looked into it. Or
Well,
seen it
big
that
ball
much.
has a big laser, blows up planets and shit. So, and the bad guys control it. Now this is like this ultimate threat in the trilogy, and of course at some point they go, oh my god, we have discovered plans for a fucking blueprint of this Death Star, and there's like this hidden access base somewhere that if you go in there and blow the thing up, the entire station blows up. And in Rogue One, they actually go into how they discovered this plan and how this flaw, this giant fucking massive flaw, this multi-trillion, billion, gajillion dollar battle station that's bigger than some planets could even exist. Because, I mean, even in the original trilogy, that was a stretch. Like, huh, we've got this massive planet killer weapon, and that just happens to be a convenient access road. You can access from the outside that leads straight into the core, and you only have to shoot it like once, and the entire thing goes up. That's convenient. So in that movie, they actually go into why that's the case and how they found out, which is I think a pretty cool perspective. I like shit like that. Now you meet one of the characters there. There's a cast of characters in that movie, and the series actually takes place before that and follows one of the central characters in his build up to becoming one of the people that ends up going on this very galaxy saving important mission. So it adds a lot of, I'd say, backstory and background perspective to the larger conflict in general that is still like connected to it. Like if this thing, if story-wise this mission hadn't happened, the main trilogy probably wouldn't have turned out the way it did, which is interesting. I like stuff like that.
Fair.
And the way that they made this series is they based it in. I mean, the writing in general was just really good, very mature, very smart, very clever. The cast of characters was very unique. There were actually some quote-unquote bad guys. You had opposite perspectives there. You had the Imperials and you had the main characters like the rebels. And at the end, you actually feel some degree of sympathy for the Imperials, and because even though they are the quote-unquote bad guys, they are not portrayed as the the ultimate evil villain that just doesn't give a shit about anything type of bad guy. Like they've got reasons for what they do, which I'm a big fan of because I try to do that in my stories.
Fair.
I like shit like that. Because in real life, even the worst people you can think of, they had genuine reasons for what they were doing, and they probably thought that they were doing the right thing. They probably weren't, but that's not how they'd explain it. No one, not even the worst evil villain, would wake up thinking to themselves, "Huh, I can't wait to fuck up the planet because I hate everything." Maybe I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna lie, there are people out there like that, but those are fucking psychopaths, not villains. They don't have to be the same thing.
Okay.
And hell,
thanks for outing me.
Yeah, you're welcome. But especially when you consider it from a story perspective, you'd want the villain to be interesting because that adds a lot of depth to the conflict, ends up making the story more interesting. Which is why I don't like superhero movies, because those bad guys are just bad guys for the fuck of it. And you just don't care about the conflict. That's the case. But oh well. So those were at least a relative success. The rest of Star Wars Disney, however, has been goddamn. How do you fuck this up, guys?
By being Disney.
Yeah, clearly. But again, so the way they treated that trilogy was just the dumbest way you could possibly think of, and I still, to this day, struggle to comprehend what the decision-making process must have been like. Because what the fuck? You make a trilogy, and you have one guy make one story, then another guy comes in to make the sequel, and you don't have those guys communicate at all. Like you don't have a coherent plan. When they wrote and made the first movie, they had no fucking idea what the second one was even going to be about. Hell, a lot of like the leftover plot points, so like the one character's backstory or whatever that hasn't been talked about, left up for debate. They didn't even know where that was gonna go. Like the main fucking character, her parents are like hinted at every so often, because everyone wants to know what her parents are. They didn't even know when they made that movie.
Yikes.
And you know, because the one guy, I think the guy that made the first movie, he also made the third movie. He had some idea, probably, but it wasn't going to be what the second guy that made the second movie was gonna do. Because that guy, and a lot of the blame for why this fucking trilogy ended up being such a disaster is that you should have just had that one guy make all 3 movies. Why did you just give the second movie to this other guy that had no communication and no desire to communicate at all? Because he came in and he just changed everything. Everything about everyone's backstory, the entire world, how it works, the whole conflict, made it a big mess. And by the end, the guy that made the third movie and also made the first one, he had to kind of salvage that whole situation somehow. Fucked it up obviously because it was just a train wreck beyond proportions. And yeah, the trilogy turned out shit. And everyone that knows anything about writing stories knows that that was never gonna fucking work, dude. And this is Disney, for fuck's sake. I mean, say what you want about their, about fucking the products that they make or the quality of that work, but they should fucking know better. They've been doing this kind of shit for, since I was alive, before that even. What the fuck, guys? I didn't have high expectations going into it in the first place, but wow, this is almost impressively bad. So, not that I'm, saying that I'm better than Disney, because I don't make multi-billion dollars here, but I do plan my fucking trilogies, that's for sure. God damn. At least I've got that one up on Mickey Mouse. Go, piece of shit. So, in order to facilitate this trilogy approach, there are a couple of things that you kind of need to roadmap before you even begin with the whole nitty-gritty, planning out a specific story part. You want to have an arc for the whole trilogy alongside an arc for each individual story. Because you want, in an ideal world, you want someone to be able to read a random one of your 3 stories and still get the gist of it. But, you also want to have that experience that if you read all 3 of them, you have a lot more insight and a lot more know-how of what the greater conflict is as a whole. Because, there's a reason this is a trilogy. It is technically, one story, just split into 3 parts.
Yep.
But because these parts take so long to make, you want each part to kind of offer something on its own. Which meant I needed a conflict for the trilogy as a whole. And I already knew what this conflict was gonna be. I talked about it before. It's the whole, magic thing. That, magic tree. Convince magic, makes the world be alive. Kill magic tree, kill world. That's basically it.
Which is what we want of the world.
Pretty much. Now, I've added a little bit more to it. And I had to do this specifically to make sure that this, because in the first story this isn't properly explained right out the gates, and I'm not gonna explain it immediately, but I want it to be hinted at that everything's connected in some way. So otherwise, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So, one of the fun things I find with some stories and movies or whatever is that if, like, at the end of a story, there's like this big reveal or plot twist. If you then go back and reread the book or rewatch the movie, you can see that reveal was kind of in your face the whole time. You just didn't notice it. That's clever fucking writing right there, because it makes the shock of the plot twist feel a lot more rewarding and a lot more real, not just a twist for the sake of it being a twist looking into superhero movies. So I've added...
You call what they do even plot twists? Or even changes?
You just see it coming from a mile away at this point. So predictable, those movies nowadays. But anyway. So I've changed practically the entirety of chapter 1 just to fit into a Neil mold. And so a lot of the scenes are they still survived, but kind of just re-altered order of the way that you switch through perspectives and added an entire new one as well. There's just a temporary character that you follow about. Not that that character is gonna disappear, they'll stay throughout the story, but at least initially you'll see it from their perspective and then later on they'll reappear as a side character. Because this character actually is connected to the great, to the grand, adventure in some way. They just don't know it yet.
Always fun.
And I've also added two quote-unquote groups to the story, two like sides of the conflict, because you've got this basically, you've got this war, the physical real-life war between the elves and the Ymirians coming up, but that's kind of just a part of like a grander war that's been going on for the last few hundred years, which is between two parties known as the Sentinels and the Order. And I'm very highly basing those off of the Assassins versus the Templar conflict. So that's kind of how you should think about it in the way that works. So you've got two groups kind of infiltrating, governments and societies and kind of steering the world from behind the curtain, so to say. And obviously you've got the quote-unquote the Sentinels, the Assassins here, trying to put a stop to that. I've given my own spin on things, the way that this works. You've got the Order, which is this mighty powerful group that's been slowly manipulating the world into, giving up its magic for the last few years, hunting down magic, because they know, their upper echelon, their officers and the leading figures, they are wizards and shit, and they know that the rarer they make magic, the more they can keep for themselves. And if in the end the entire world dies and they are the only ones left standing, they will ultimately, be gods, because they will control all the magic. And if the world has to be sacrificed for them to be, recreated from the ashes and rule as gods over the new society, in their minds that's a sacrifice worth taking. There is a bit more to this that explains why they went down this route, because these are ultimately the big actual villains of the story. The smaller conflict is a lot more gray and not as black and white, but this, the overarching conflict, these guys are the bad guys, straight up. There's not much of an argument you can make for ending the world. There's not going to be anyone, except for Riddle maybe, that actually wants that to happen.
I mean, there's a Riddle at least.
Yeah. Riddle's just sitting along the sidelines going, "Go Order, woo, I wrote them. You guys are awesome." Woo. But
take me into the Order.
The way this originally happened is, and this happened at least in universe, I think of 2,000 years ago. I'm yet to really make a timeline, so just take that with a grain of salt. It was a fucking while ago. So, which was basically when like another sort of society, another nation ruled the planet back in those days. Now, this was a very magic heavy, civilization. It kind of ruled their whole life, and the regular human, the guys that weren't magicians or wizards or gifted with magic entirely,
that weren't magicians or illusionists.
Illusionists, yeah, they weren't frauds, but they were, because of that less powerful and less special. They were looked down at as like second-rate citizens and more or less used as slaves for generations. In comes the Order's, ruling family, which began their origin as slaves, and slowly realized that they were the first humans that were capable of magic. Now this was, and most of them had been alive, for their whole life, right?
She's gonna be, huh?
That's generally how that happens. You're alive for your whole life, and you're not if it ends.
Pick up a few friends of mine. They're hitting
But
the bank
this is like
I gave my word that you were the man, so don't screw this up.
so like 40
Get
years
into
old,
the
60
bank
years
before
old. There's a whole
5
fucking
o'clock.
generation, a
Not
whole
minute
family.
after.
So they had this power the whole time. They're only really noticing it now that they had this hidden potential, because they were slaves. They were beaten daily, treated horribly, and they really believed that they were. Because at some point, this happens with real life slaves as well. Is that eventually you're so submissive to your master because you're beaten and tortured so much that you actually start believing into their bullshit. You know, you actually start believing that it kind of breaks you as a person, which is kind of what happened to a whole few dozen generations over a few hundred years. So you know, the humans of that era were very, very broken. So
They were very fucked.
Very fucked in every way, yeah. None of them were the good way, anyway. So they notice that they have this hidden potential, and I mean that's the start right there of what would be, you know, the human uprising, because because they knew this was likely their only chance, and not just their, but humanity's only chance. They they don't reveal this immediately, because what will happen is they know a stupid little parlor trick. In comes the fucking magical dragon that just fucking destroys them all, and you know their little insurrection ends right there. So they spent years, you know, training to become not just good wizards, but one of the, you know, few of the best, which they end up succeeding in. These were really gifted, you know, wizards that end up kind of going practically insane because of it, because they, you know, like I said, because they are so, I'd say, filled with disgust and with hate, because the way that, you know, they remember how they were treated, and they are not very reasonable anymore, which is why initially their hunt for, you know, magical beings began, because after they do overthrow the, you know, nation of old, which I've yet to name, I probably will eventually, but you know, baby steps. Once they do succeed and the humans kind of become top dog out there, you know, they begin a witch hunt that lasts hundreds of years, basically all the way until today's era, which explains why, you know, over so many years, you know, magic has become rarer and rarer, because they've been systematically wiping it out and kind of going insane, for lack of a better word, in the process, because one of their first achievements, which I'm pretty sure you should have guessed by now, is they've achieved the fact of immortality. They do not age. I mean, you kind of have to if you're expecting to be a couple of thousand years old.
Yeah, fair.
So they are still around. Obviously, the rest of the humans that were alive back in those days, that they never really got, you know, that immortality drink, so they're dead. And these people, they have been alive for fuck knows how long, and they've been in full-on revenge mode for a few thousand years at this point. So these are not reasonable people anymore. They have been absolutely radicalized, and they do think of themselves as gods already. And hell, if you're effectively immortal, to some degree, you might already be a god. You just need to have control still. They are not. They are like very, very different from the way they, you know, used to be, because initially their uprising was arguably justified. They just kind of gone off the deep end by making it last as long, and, you know, trying to kind of do what the magical nation did to humans. They kind of want to flip that on its head and do the same thing back, which is not a good thing. Fighting fire with fire like that, it always goes bad. But oh well.
Oh well.
So that's the order right there, and the rest of the order is obviously their henchmen that they recruit over the years. They likely give them. They don't tell them the full truth, if they tell them any truth at all. And then you've got the Sentinels, you know, the quote-unquote assassins of the story, trying to stop them. Now, this isn't the assassins the way that you think them, you know, with their cool white cloaks and their hoods and their hidden blades, but just the principle behind it. So you've got, you know, agents hiding in, you know, plain sight, hunting down the order whenever they can, and this could take out multiple forms. Now, the way this works is that little fucking giant ass magical tree thing I talked about earlier. That's a somewhat conscious being. If the world had any true god, that's probably it, because it is, you know, with magic being the lifeblood of the universe, that is technically the beating heart of the world. And it's a somewhat conscious being. I use the word somewhat because I still have no fucking idea how I'm gonna actually explain this bullshit. But, you know, I'll figure it out eventually. And it realizes, I mean, it has realized it over the years the threat that this order is to the world in general, despite their initial good intentions, they've now completely gone off the deep end, and they will be bad, very bad for everything. So, with its limited supply of magic left, it basically like handpicks some operatives that the tree knows are going to do whatever they can to protect magic once they figure out what's going on. Kind of like the ultimate test of someone's character. And they are, and whichever people these are, they are given some ability. Which kind of serves as their hidden blade, so to say. That the assassins had that as a signature weapon. You know, the sentinels, they've got some sort of ability as their signature weapon here. And I'm toying with the idea of that like ability being different for each individual, depending on their skill set or whatever. Something nice, something cool.
Fair.
And at least for the way I've described it now, is that the last few years, the last few dozen years, the Sentinels have basically been losing this conflict. Like, they've been on the back foot for fucking ever, and they are basically being wiped the fuck out at this point. Like, the Order is just, they've really, stepped up their game. They've really, beaten the shit out of everything. And the final conflict, this war that they've started between the elves and the Mirror, is their attempt to finish the war. Because, they need to manipulate the world into them achieving the positions needed to be able to, steer the nations of the world to doing what they want them to do. And this is exactly what they want them to do. They want the big ass American army to burn that tree to the ground, which is exactly what's gonna happen. So they manufactured this political situation, and now they, in the story, they support this coup that the Winters family, Philippe and his buddies, they commit. But, they are Order after all.
Of course.
Which, makes the most sense. So they're not part of the crazy internal Dark Wizard family. They're just regular Order people that kind of didn't know the extent of how they were manipulated. That they do believe they're actually just doing the right thing. They've got no idea about the actual Order's hidden agenda, so to say. Just like most of the Order doesn't. It's just them that know. Because most of the Order, according to their plan, is going to die anyway. Like, everyone will die, except for them. They don't give a shit.
Fair.
And you don't tell your army that they're all gonna die, because they're not gonna fight for you anymore. That's for sure. But anyway. So that's the thing. And in order to at least kind of hint at this, because there are some people that know about this in universe. One of which is the American King, which explains his reluctance to actually, go into the forest, because he knows that's what the Order wants, and he's doing whatever he can to stop it. The problem is that right now he's running out of excuses to tell everyone why he's not doing it. Because that's the Order's doing. They've manipulated the situation so that he's kind of forced to do it, and when he doesn't do it, they just get rid of him and do it anyway. They're clever fuckers. They know what they're doing. And
Yeah, fair.
King, he knows about the tree. He knows about the Sentinels. Knows about the Order, and knows that he has to prevent this at all costs. He just and this is at the time that the story begins. He doesn't know how to actually stop them anymore. Like, they've kind of already beaten him at this game of chess, and he's kind of struggling to comprehend what, if anything, he can still do about it. Now, the way he figured it out is not initially explained in the story, because, he dies before he can even tell anyone. We know that he knows, but the reader and the rest of the characters, they don't know that he knows. Because, at this point in the story, the reader doesn't even know that there's something like that going on to begin with.
True.
That's revealed later. But at least, because I have to keep this all, in mind, because this is basically a giant timeline of a story that happens in the background as like a skeleton to the trilogy. So I have to write this all down to make sure I don't forget about it all, because this is not something that happens or is explained very clearly in the chapters. so it's difficult to keep track of. So I got a separate page where I specifically keep track of that hidden story, so I know where it's at, what's been revealed, what hasn't been revealed. Now, one thing that I've had to decide upon initially is obviously, the king knows, so how the fuck did he find out? And I've decided that this is where that new character comes in. She's a just a regular like engineer on the aircraft carrier which the part of the story takes place in. Because I do want them to have one of the more central roles in the story. That's not going to change.
Fair.
And I wanted to have a perspective of a character there that sees what's happening on that carrier, but that sees all those jets, but from the perspective of not a pilot for once. Because the pilots, and this is true to real life as well, they don't really think that what they do is all that special because they've been trained to not think that way. But everyone else around them, they look at everything that's happening. They see this fucking jet just launch from a catapult into the darkness, or vice versa, just reappears out of thin air, crashes into the deck, snacks a fucking wire, and comes to a halt within seconds. You can't look at that and go, "What the fuck did I just witness?" That's cool shit. It's very intimidating, very fucking visceral. That's the way, at least I've been told it is from actual like former deck personnel. And hell, I'd say a little bit common sense that yeah, watching this shit in real life and from the perspective of like the ground crew is quite a fucking experience. Really different from the way that the pilots experience it, that's for sure. And hell, I wanted more characters there to begin with, and obviously diversifying the cast a little bit was always a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, you should still have a cleaner.
Yeah, I mean, we've got 2 at the moment, actually. We'll get to that. So, this girl is obviously a plane captain, and she's been assigned to the plane that initially Blizzard flies, and he's the guy that's going to be, in this chapter, going to be told that he's not going to be flying anymore. So great. So she's kind of like, the carrier's already on its way now. So, and the squadron that she's attached to, which is the main, which is, our guys, not all of them have arrived yet. And so, because, and plane captains, which is what she is, are responsible for one individual jet. They've got a team of people and they have one jet that they're assigned to that they need to make sure is, in working order. Because you can't expect one team to take care of all of them because it's just too much work. So they've got one dedicated team per jet. And she's the captain of her team, and the jet in question, like I said, is not there yet. So the first few days she's kind of just not scrolling about the carrier. She does do some work, but for the most part, she's taking this, opportunity to kind of explore the ship, get to know her workspace, get to know the people, so that when the work starts, she's a little bit more prepared than everyone else was when they first started. Now, the chapter kicks off when she's walking around on the deck of the carrier at night, and this is one of her first few times actually walking around on the deck at night. So she's kind of just taking it in, and I'm using that opportunity to kind of describe what it's like, of course, and she's reflecting on her grandfather. That's an old F4 pilot, because I just had to throw it in. I just had to put that little thing there. That means that I can make deliveries for the F4 later that go with the story and vice versa. That's cool. I like it. Little nerdy thing. And she grew up, with his stories about, being a pilot and living that kind of life. And while the rest of the family was like, "Oh Jesus Christ, shut up," she was one of the only ones that was actually like really interested in it. So her dream, kind of as a kid, was, to be involved in, in this basically. Now, initially her dream was to be a pilot, but she learned pretty quickly that just wasn't for her, because I mean it's kind of scary as shit, and she's a little bit more of a tech head instead. So she's got this role now instead, which she's pretty fucking happy with. Now, what's not immediately explained is that her grandfather, that 4 pilot, he's the first one to actually become a sentinel in God knows how many years. But he's the one that first found out about this shit. And he's the one that told the king. Because it was kind of like a quote-unquote secret mission kind of deal. And the 2 of them, they sought to keep this secret for as long as they could, because holy shit, it's kind of insane. And by now, you know, the grandfather, he's old, he's not, you know, very useful to anyone anymore. Order is one, you know, most of the other sentinels at the time, you know, they were getting wiped out left and right. And he's kind of gone in, not into hiding, but you know, he hasn't really done much of anything. And at the moment, he can't anymore because the king is, well, he's going to die. He doesn't know that yet, but he will. But this is kind of like, because I want this reveal of the king to come later. Obviously, that he knew about everything that was going on, but that needs to go hand in hand with, you know, explaining how he found out that information in the first place. And I think it's a lot more interesting if we kind of obviously already kind of set that up, so when it's revealed that it was in fact this one pilot, that his, you know, presence in the story has already been established by that point, which is, you know, what
Fair.
you know, opted to throw this in there. Now, obviously, so she thinks a little bit about, you know, the stories her grandfather, you know, kept telling her, and now she's actually there, and a couple of minutes later, and she doesn't notice that there's something going to happen, but she notices it while it's happening. But she doesn't know anything about the way, you know, the deck actually works, or the logistics of it. So she just sees people running about and doesn't really know what it means. Now, what it does mean is that a couple of seconds later, there's actually a fighter jet coming in for a landing. Now, that's one of the pilot crew that we're going to be becoming very familiar with because they're main characters. And it's one of my favorite characters. It's Hamster. So she lands on the deck and makes this character kind of just basically shit her pants in this sheer shock, just going, holy fuck. Because that happens like right in her face, like just a couple of meters away, which just has to be very intense. So, and then obviously, you know, this character kind of just has this holy shit moment. That's the most badass thing I've seen in fucking forever. Because this, like I said, this happens during the night. And, well, as at least I've experienced in DCS and from what I've heard from others, is that there's nothing fucking darker out there than the ocean at night. I mean, I've been on the ocean at night, and trust me, there's fuck all light. It is a very weird thing to describe, but just the moment that you walk up to the side of the boat, it looks like you're staring into the fucking void. You don't even see the water, you don't really see the stars. You do if it's not cloudy, but it wasn't my case. So you don't see fucking anything. It could be that the edge of the boat is like the end of the fucking world. So I mean, that is a fucking scary, like, an oddly cool situation to be in. Because I mean, I know that some guys on the boat did like it. I loved it because it just felt so awesome. But at the same time, you could not feel smaller. Like you felt tiny because you just know that this massive, godly, unforgiving ocean's out there that you can't even see anymore because it's so massive. But you can just hear it, which is quite intimidating, to be very honest with you. Now, do this on a carrier where, you know, again, big flat deck, don't see fuck all beside it, and you slowly hear the familiar roar of like a fucking jet engine coming in. But it sounds like it's much further away than it actually is, because that's the way these weird things actually work. Because jet engines, when you hear them coming in, so that when they're coming towards you, all you're hearing is the air intake sucking up air, and that's not that loud. Once they pass over you and they're, you know, their asses towards you, that's when you start going deaf. God damn. So when a jet is actually coming in towards the deck, the guys on the deck, they don't actually hear it coming all that much. Especially if it's windy, there's waves out there. That's what you'll be hearing. That jet, if you don't know that it's coming, is gonna take you completely by surprise. Because, well, guess what? You can't fucking see it coming either. Because it's pitch black out there. So imagine standing there at the edge of the deck. It's pitch black out there. Can't see fuck all. And out of nowhere, this jet just comes, just materializes like 5 feet away from where you're standing. Comes out of the darkness, crashes like with 140 miles onto the deck, catches a wire, and is stationary within seconds. Now that's gotta leave a fucking impression. Hell, that would scare the shit out of me, and I'm kind of familiar with it already. Not in real life, but at least I know the concept. But in real life, I think I just freeze and go, whoa. That's badass. And of course, this pilot hamster, she taxis the plane, gets out, and just goes, yep, that was pretty shit. I fucked that up. As if, what she just did is the most normal thing ever that anyone's ever done. And to most of the deck crew that's out there, yeah, that was pretty routine. They do see that every single day, multiple times per day, or per night in this case. But to this one character, which she only just got to the carrier, it's just this holy fucking shit moment. And the fact that the pilot just comes out so casually is just even more impressive from her perspective. Which is the way I wanted to introduce these pilots, because, well, at least in real life, there's a big disconnect between how dangerous people think this job is and how dangerous it actually is. But people tend to underestimate it, actually. Because this is like a fucking job that is ridiculously difficult and dangerous, where the most minor fucking flaw or fuck up could mean to, not just your death, but the death of dozens of people on the deck.
Of the Emperor?
Oh, that too. But I wanted to kind of translate that, or get that perspective across in the story here. And also, put a contrast to that by showing off that the actual pilots that end up doing the work, they're kind of numb to it in a way. Like, they know that it's dangerous, but they don't really treat it as such anymore. Because imagine if you have to do this and you're terrified. That's not gonna make you fly or land any better. That's just a death sentence waiting to happen, basically. So I wanted to get that across to make sure that because we'll be seeing a lot of this in the story, and not every single time I will go into detail describing how dangerous it is. So I want to get that impression taken care of early, so that the next time where I'm describing what they're doing, you kind of get the impression that it's been established that it's quite fucking insane. So I don't want this to be a badass superhero flick where they're just doing badass things left and right and making it look ridiculously easy, as if there's no threat to it at all, and you don't feel any tension, there's no drama. No. Miss me with that bullshit. And the second big change is actually related to your character, in a way.
Oh, yikes.
You actually show up. Carter shows up chapter 1. Because he wasn't actually meant to show up barely at all in the first story.
He is the cleaner, right?
He is the cleaner, yeah.
Okay, good.
But he is the cleaner not on the carrier, not yet. He might go there. I might just keep him somewhere else. And he's not the only cleaner in the story. Because there's a side character right alongside him.
No, it's just Carter and like a couple of clones.
Yeah, just multiple Carters. It's Carter and all his other personalities.
Yeah.
But no, so you're not the only cleaner. Duncan now is too. That's how he starts the story, right alongside you. 2 janitors being miserable.
Good.
So that's going to be fun.
And Carter says janitor, and Hunter
Gets lucky, yeah.
gets on his knees in front of the boss.
Yeah, basically. Now,
Because there's no such thing as luck.
There's no such thing as luck. There's just hard work. Wink, wink.
Yeah.
Now what?
Very hard
is,
work if like the boss demands it.
Yeah. But so the problem that occurred is that so there's a lot of layers to this. What's the why this situation even comes to pass? Because what's going to happen is not a usual, ordinary situation. It's kind of insane. It doesn't ever happen in in real life, and it would not usually happen in the story because it doesn't make sense. So I kind of needed to bring out an explanation as to why this weird choice is ultimately made, to make it at least somewhat believable in the slightest fucking way. Because that's, the kind of creative liberty you can get away with a fictional story. Obviously, in real life, this would never fucking happen. But, in this universe, it did, and I need to kind of, give a somewhat semi-believable explanation as to why it does. So the first layer is that the carrier which they're based on is the newest one out the bunch, meaning that the entire crew is relatively green, and a lot of the squadrons that are selected for this carrier, they're new. And the admiral that ended up being assigned to be in charge of the carrier, obviously he's not new. You don't get a green admiral, that's just not how that works. So we got George Foreman, obviously.
Well, so what if he's red or blue?
Fair enough, it might be a little bit blue. Because, his admiral uniforms are technically blue, so, he's blue.
And to a degree, I would consider them coppers and such as well.
Shut up. But yeah,
No, but like, I mean that. Like, I could see that be like a former cop.
But so Mr. Foreman comes in, he realizes that there's nothing really he can do about the crew of the carrier, they're just going to need to build up experience. But there's a political situation brewing that the chance is pretty big that the carrier is going to see some active duty pretty quickly. They're not going to get the chance to do some actual proper training routines, so he figures out that he needs some experienced people on that boat really quickly. So at the last minute, he decides to switch out one of the 4 squadrons on the ship. Because there are 4 squadrons in total, one of them being the ground attack squadron and the other 3 being based on the Hornet. Obviously I've called them something else in this universe, but that's what they are. So he switched out one of the Hornet squadrons for our current squadron, and they are much more experienced, they've been doing it for a while. And so he switches those out last minute. Meaning that, wherever these guys were, they need to fucking fly their ass over. And most of them were just at home. They were not even on active duty at the moment, they were on, just regular leave. So they're scattered all over the place, making their way towards the whichever airbase to grab their jets, fly over to the carrier. Meanwhile, the carrier's already kind of fucked off. It's on its way to, go do the mission site or to their deployment range or whatever. So they kind of just ended up getting this situation rushed in. Add to that to the fact that one of their more experienced pilots, Mr. Blizzard, just found out that he's not actually going to be able to fly anymore. So they're 1 man down. And the carrier's already moving. They're 1 man down, the carrier's already moving. They need to find a fucking replacement. Stat. Just ASAP. Immediately. Because they don't have a lot of time. So they send the XO Lynx and they send Nerd, another one of the more experienced pilots, over to one of the training bases for the Air Force to find a replacement. Now this is where they, come across Duncan and Carter that are kind of just minding their own business, and cleaning the joint. They're not doing anything important, clearly. Now they do notice that suddenly, 2, Navy officers, actual pilots walk in. Because they're used to seeing pilots, but that means green, inexperienced rookies. That's what they're used to. So when they see 2 actual pilots walk in, it's like seeing an alpha predator walk into a pack of pigs. Not the same.
Fair.
So they go, oh shit, that's pretty cool. And because this is so short notice, no one's actually been notified of their arrival, or the fact that a recruitment selection even needed to happen. So the base commander doesn't know they're here. They walk in and they don't know the layout of the base, they've never been there, so they actually ask the nearest 2 people that they find, they can give us directions. And guess who that's it? That's Carter and Hunter. They happen to be there. So they kind of go, wow, holy shit. Okay, yeah, sure, we'll help you. And obviously, because Carter can't shut the fuck up.
As always.
When they learn that these are basically Hornet pilots, again that name was something else, but same deal. Carter makes the comment that, you know, hey Hunt, you know a lot about that thing, don't you? And Hunt goes, shut up, I play video games, it's not the fucking same, dude. Because I've basically just based Hunter literally off of me right now. A guy that plays a lot of fucking video games.
Fair.
And really flight sims. So the same level of knowledge I have is what he has right now. So, and then that's me trying to, obviously, one, give a contrast, you know, saying that, you know, being a gamer in DCS is not the fucking same as being a real life pilot, because, I mean, Hunter doesn't even like the fact that Carter brought it up, because he just knows that they're not going to take that seriously at all, which they don't, by the way. They listen to that and they go, huh? Anyway, just show us the way to go and please leave us alone afterwards, please. Holy shit. Nerd. Says the pilot that whose call sign is nerd, which is hilarious.
Yep.
Calls him a nerd. Anyway, so they guide him towards the base commander's office. Obviously, you know, Bones make that stupid comment, which makes Hunter feel like a candy ass. But, I mean, he is a janitor, so he is a candy ass.
But don't take no crap. Nobody.
And therefore, this is a big change for how Duncan was originally supposed to start in the story. So kind of his whole initial arc has been changed. I think in chapter 2, let's see. I've kind of rushed through this, like chapter writing explanation thing that I always do. I'll probably go back and edit it slightly to make sure the timing and the pacing works better. But I'll probably do most of that while I'm actually writing the bits as opposed to doing it in planning. But anyway, so chapter 2, this is roughly a day later, and they only have like about 3 days to get this taken care of, because, you know, otherwise the carrier is going to be way far out of range. They need to, you know, go back empty-handed. So nerded links, they study some of the recruits, trying to, you know, find one that makes a good fit for the team, because obviously initially, you know, they need a recruit that's capable, but they also need to find one that they can work with that's, you know, a good fit, so to say, you know, a good team player. Not that they get along, because that's pretty important there. And at the moment, however, not a single recruit actually stands out to them. Because one, the group that they're faced with is very early on in training, because, you know, like I said, the situation kind of just got thrown out there, and no one was really prepared for this. So no recruits were, you know, scheduled to be trained to the level that, you know, they needed, because they weren't, you know, anticipating a sudden replacement. And at the same time, a new Navy aviation doctrine just came out with a new rulebook, and these recruits, they're kind of trained very strictly in a particular set of rules that this squadron is not necessarily looking for. You know, because especially recruits, if you learn them a really complex set of rules, it's going to be difficult for them to actually, you know, break off away from that and start doing other stuff, because that's all they know. The more experienced pilots, they've dabbled in different things, so they're quicker to adapt to new stuff. But because this, you know, is complicated as high fuck, it's going to be difficult for a recruit to switch on a dime. And which is the problem that these two pilots are kind of now facing now, is that they now suddenly have a batch of recruits that's likely not it's going to be difficult to work with. And only having about 3 days, it makes their, you know, decision-making process even more complicated.
Fair.
Now, to add to the layer of reasons as to why the situation will eventually develop in the way it does, is, now again, going back to the point that none of this was really, you know, premeditated at all. They don't even have a place to stay. They do book an hotel, the two pilots that's close to the base, but they don't even have fucking transportation to get there. So the moment they walk out the base, you know, it's night, and most of the base, the way air bases operate is that people stay on the base. They don't go home, they stay on the fucking base. The only people that go on the base are people that aren't technically soldiers, which includes the janitors in this case. So they walk out, and they see Duncan walk into his car and think to themselves, well, that's alright, I guess. Approach him, ask him kindly, you know, to take them, which he agrees to, because, oh shit, no. Of course you'd agree to something like that. Which helps, you know, because they're in the car, right? Obviously they talk a little bit more. They start to at least be a little bit more accepting of the way that this guy kind of does know a lot about the Hornets in a weird way, and because this is something that real life pilots face, is that they're not aware of how good like commercial simulators actually are. So when they hear I'm pretty good at a sim, they think to themselves that you're pretty good at the shitty fucking flight sim that they've got in the actual military, which is hilariously still worse than DCS. Even though some actual branches have now adopted DCS, which I just think is the coolest thing. But for the most part, the majority of the Air Force and the Navy, they've got this dumbass Minecraft-looking ass fucking flight sim. So they don't take it seriously. They don't really comprehend, you know, the level of knowledge that you can get from an actual like proper sim. Anyway, so they're kind of starting to learn a little bit more about that. Learn a little bit more about, you know, just him as a person. And step one is made. Is that their initial conversation was awkward because obviously Carter shut it in. Had to just make it awkward for him. Now that, you know, Carter's not there, they actually, you know, get a normal conversation going. And notice that they get along a little bit, which is one of the more important steps needed for the decision that's ultimately about to get made. But obviously, you must have seen this one coming from a mile away. Is Duncan's going to be chosen as the replacement pilot? Obviously.
No. He's such a bad fit.
Obviously.
He's the worst one they could have asked.
Yeah. Thing is that when your selection falls between bad pilots that are probably going to be difficult to work with and a bad pilot that's probably going to be easier to work with, you know, you pick the lesser of two evils. They're not happy about it, but you know, they don't really have much of a choice in the end. But so that's kind of one of the first stepping stones for that. Chapter later, let's see. It's yet another the next day, so now they really don't have a lot of time. He switched to Nerd, who's been the POV character for this whole. We've not seen a single thing through Lynx or Duncan or Carter, because I've strictly prohibited the use of Duncan as a POV character until he gets into the squadron, but not before, because that would give it away too much. Because I'm obviously it's easy and it's straightforward and really predictable now. Because one, we know that Duncan is going to end up being the main character because, you know, it's fucking Duncan, for fuck's sake. And I've only written, you know, him or his role in these chapters. But in the actual chapters, there'll be a fuck ton of side NPCs and other characters that they'll meet. So for a neutral reader's perspective, it wouldn't be obvious at all. It'd be kind of like a surprise that, you know, they go with him. Because he's one of many side characters there. So for us, obvious. Hopefully for anyone else, less obvious. So we see another training observation from Nerd's perspective. They go through a simulated training, and while the recruits, they do show, you know, obviously a level of competence in the simulator with knowing what the switches do and kind of how the airplane works. The strict rule doctrine has them unable to adapt to the squadron's desires, because every so often, she walks by a recruit and asks him, hey, can you do this and this for me? Can you show that and that? And the recruit doesn't know. And she just goes, oh, God damn it. And while, you know, she's just walking about, she picks up on, you know, that Hunter's there. He's cleaning the room, because the base commander, now that he's noticed that there's two actual, like, high-ranking pilots about, he wants his days to be nice and tidy. So he sends Duncan in to clean the fucking the simulator room while it's in use, not knowing that one of the two pilots is already there. Because, well, the pilots there, Lynx and Nerd, they were supposed to obviously go to him, to the commander, to, you know, obviously talk about the replacement. But they quickly realized that they want to make this choice themselves, and because there's multiple classes out there, they spread out. So just by sheer circumstance, quote unquote, sheer circumstance and convenience.
Very sheer.
Obviously, you know, Duncan and Nerd end up being in the same room again, and she just happens to notice that when a recruit kind of struggles to do something, Duncan notices, quickly points something out to him, and goes on his way. Like a very quick, tiny interaction that just has her raise her eyebrows and go, huh, interesting.
Fair.